Good evening. Welcome to Reflections. Today's date is Friday, October 11th, 2013. Our guest tonight is Kevin Riordan, 62 West Point Terrace in Tariffville, Connecticut. He was born on May 21st, 1935 in Norwich, Connecticut, and he'll be our guest here tonight. Thank you. Hi, Kevin. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Good. So we generally start by just going back to what maybe your earliest memory might have been growing up in Norwich, and tell us a little bit about your early childhood.
Okay. Well, I think my earliest memory, one of the most traumatic, was the 1938 hurricane.
So you have a memory of that?
Wow. Oh, yes, indeed. Wow. I remember I was a little over 3 when that hurricane hit. In our side yard down on Ox Hill Road, we had 2 huge oak trees.
Okay.
And in between there was little cement steps.
All right.
And I can remember playing with my babysitter under those oak trees.
Prior to
the hurricane.
Oh, so you actually have a memory of these.
Those trees went down with the hurricane.
Okay.
And I can remember the hurricane because it was very dramatic and it was a big surprise.
Right.
We didn't have all the Doppler radar then that we do now. And one thing I remember about it, my father had put canvas awnings on the windows.
Okay.
Because no one ever had any air conditioning or even fans, practically.
Right.
And he closed the awnings up and they filled up with water. And it got heavy and pushed the metal
from the rain
windows.
You're talking about? Yeah, okay.
And I remember the water coming down the staircase.
Really? So it was actually backing up through the house and coming.
But the funny story we have, if it's funny about that hurricane, was we lived quite a far out of town, and my father worked for the Norwich Bulletin.
Okay.
And there were trees down and wires, a lot of wires, because in those days the telephone poles had many cross trees.
Okay.
And there was no wires underground.
Right, right.
So
they didn't do the trimming and stuff that they do today.
It was very bad.
Okay.
And he had to walk home because he couldn't drive because of the fallen trees and the telephone poles.
All right.
So they brought in electrical crews from the Midwest. They had to bring them in by train. They didn't have big planes in those days.
Right.
And Norwich is 12 miles from the seacoast.
Right.
So these people from Ohio and Michigan arrived, and the side yard was full of dead starfish. The wind was so strong that it had blown them up from Long Island Sound.
Yeah, yeah.
12 miles.
Wow.
And
so did it come up, the Thames River is there, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's how it got up.
That's how they came up. But the starfish came airborne.
Really?
Yeah, because we were not anywhere near the river. So anyway, these guys were amazed at these things.
Yeah.
They didn't know what they were. And when they asked my mother, what are they? And she told them.
Right.
And she said, and they asked her, can we have some? She said, sure, take all you want.
Okay.
They were dead.
It's amazing.
And they had never seen them before. So she told them that she had 3 small boys, and it was pretty tough without electricity. So they said, well, we'll see what we can do.
Right.
So that night when my father came home, it was dark, of course, as we were coming up Holland Road to where we lived.
Okay.
All the houses were in darkness, except one.
They got you lit up, huh? Oh, no.
They lit it up. So that's pretty much my memory of early memory of the hurricane.
Right.
Next memory is World War II.
Okay, so you were 5 years old when that broke out. Yeah.
And I remember my father and the next door neighbor, Larry Siebold, he was a history professor at Norwich Free Academy.
Yep.
Not history, sorry, French teacher.
All right.
So my father and he were assigned the important job of making sure that the 4 corners of Ox Hill Road and Holland Road were safe.
So they're like the community watch group.
They were out there at night making sure everybody was not driving. And made sure if they were
they
driving.
kind of deputized almost locals just to kind of fill the gaps. Huh?
Right. Yeah. Everybody had to have
almost a police state in some ways.
Everybody had to have top of their headlights covered in tape.
Wow.
So I remember one hot night it was very quiet, and my father and Larry Siebold were down there, and I heard Larry say to my father, "I'll be back in a few minutes." So he walked up the road past my bedroom window.
Right.
About 5 minutes later, he came back, and it was very, very quiet. And I could hear the ice clicking in the glasses.
Okay.
they had decided they needed a little courage to guard that four corners.
I can imagine it was I've interviewed other folks that were involved with. They had radar installations, I guess, on some of the peaks around here and stuff like that, and they had some unusual jobs, but a lot of it was very boring, they'd say.
Oh, yeah.
Because there really was never a real threat, but they had to do their duty.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other memory of World War II is seeing the movie The Sullivan Brothers.
Okay.
And they quickly put that together after they went down with the Juno, the cruiser.
Okay.
Guadalcanal.
That was the five brothers.
Five brothers. And it was at the Palace Theater in Norwich, and they handed out paper sailor's hats with the Sullivan Brothers on them.
Oh, really? Okay.
And halfway through the movie, we had an air raid.
Oh, great.
So we all had to go outside.
Okay.
5 minutes later, we all went back inside.
Okay.
And the only other memory of World War II is when Japan surrendered, the house across the street on Ox Hill Road had an elderly grandmother visiting them. And I can see her now coming up the side yard ringing a cowbell.
Oh, really?
She must have been 90 years old.
I think most people will never, it's very difficult unless you went through something like that to realize the mobilization that occurred.
Yeah.
The amount that it impacted everybody in the community, from taping headlights to...
we had Victory Gardens.
Right.
And for years afterwards, when I cut the lower yard, I cut off the stalks. They were, I don't know, cucumbers or something. They kept growing and growing.
Oh, the remnants of the Victory Garden. Yeah. Interesting. So you grew up there. You went to school in Norwich?
Norwich Free Academy.
Norwich Free, and that was a private school?
Norwich Free Academy is kind of an odd situation. It is a private school, but it's public.
Okay.
It's paid for by the town.
All right.
It's very unique looking. It looks like a college campus.
Did it start out private and then it was morphed into the town system? Or
I think it started out as this odd thing where it was a private school, but the town used it as a high school. It had to pay board of directors or whatever.
So that was like from kindergarten right up? You went all...
Well, kindergarten, no. I went to kindergarten at Samuel Huntington School, then first, second, third grade at John Mason School, and then back to Samuel Huntington up through the 8th grade.
Okay.
And then 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade were Norwich Free Academy.
Now, you said you did, that's kind of interesting because you said that you went to kindergarten.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have kindergarten in most towns at that point.
Well, Samuel Huntington was a bigger school, so they had the kindergarten there.
Okay.
John Mason School was very small.
Okay.
And first grade was there, and second, third, fourth. I remember being in that room the day after Pearl Harbor Day, by the way.
No kidding.
Teachers scared the living daylights out of us, told us something awful had happened the day before. And
we
were really scared.
They didn't quite, they weren't quite as subtle.
No.
So anyway, so that's, those are interesting times. What was your, any school day memories that you find yourself recounting other than this is Pearl Harbor?
Not too much. It was pretty traditional schooling.
Yeah.
In high school, I was in the band.
Okay.
And I also was president of the Academy Recreation Association.
Oh.
Every Wednesday night, we'd bring out the ping pong tables in the gym and do things and have Coca-Cola and all that stuff.
So it was a pleasant experience overall.
It was very nice.
Okay, so you graduate high school in Norwich Free Academy. Mm-hmm. Where do you go from there?
I went to the University of Connecticut Storrs.
Okay.
And I was there for 4 years.
A little different campus back then.
Yeah. A lot smaller than it is now. But it was nice.
Yeah.
It was kind of isolated, and but we found things to do on the weekends.
Okay.
That was the big thing, to try to keep people there on the weekends. They all wanted to go home.
Right. So, they had their lives at home.
Yeah. But it was fun. And after I graduated, I went to New York City.
Okay. Now, this was the early 50s.
This would be the late 50s. I graduated from college in 57.
Okay, so you started in 53. Okay. So you went, what did you get your degree in?
Business administration.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you got a BA from UConn, and you head to New York City? Okay.
And I worked for B. Altman and Company. It's a big retail store.
Okay.
Diagonally across the street from the Empire State Building.
Oh, wow.
And I was an assistant buyer in what they call the bath department.
Okay.
Handled shower curtains and towels and that kind of thing.
That's an interesting first job.
In 1960, I decided it was time to change.
Right.
And I went down to Wall Street. A friend of mine said it was a pretty good employment agency down there.
Okay.
And I ended up working for a subsidiary of Prentice Hall Publishing, which was a big college textbook publisher.
Okay, what was the name of it again?
Prentice Hall
Prentice
Publishing
Hall.
Company.
Okay, right. I've heard of that. Yeah.
And the subsidiary was called Wadsworth Publishing.
Okay.
And at that time, it was located in San Francisco.
Okay.
So I went out to my first sales meeting in January '61. It was actually in San Francisco. They moved to Belmont, California, which is 25 miles down the peninsula from San Francisco.
Okay.
And that's where the next sales meetings were. And I'd go out for a week in January and a week in August.
Okay.
And got kind of to know the city,
Right.
San Francisco. And
Pretty interesting place.
very
then.
interesting place. And at this time, I was living in Boston. After I took the job at Wadsworth, I lived in Boston.
Okay.
And I was in Boston from 1960 to 1964 when I actually moved to California.
Right.
And Boston was a great town to live in.
Okay.
I lived on Beacon Street in the Back Bay.
Yep.
And it was near Charles Street. There was a lot going on, a lot of young people, all the schools and so forth.
So New York and Boston probably were pretty vibrant places in that day. Yeah.
I like Boston.
And still
better.
very safe.
Yeah, I like Boston, but
Did
it
you?
was pretty safe,
Yeah.
except in 1963 we had the Boston Strangler.
Oh, that kind of takes the fun out of it.
Well, you did.
Yeah.
You had to watch it walking down Charles Street because if you stared at the pretty girls too long, you might be suspect.
Oh, because they didn't know who was
They
doing it.
didn't know who this guy was.
Wow.
And
Strange experience.
it's kind of a strange situation.
Yeah.
But it was a great town.
Yeah.
Had a little sailboat club on the Charles River. That was nice.
Okay.
And then I moved in 1964 to San Francisco. And I had been a salesman for Wadsworth. I covered all of New England, upstate New York, and Montreal, Canada. It was a big territory.
By car?
By car.
Yeah, okay.
And there was McGill University in Montreal and Sir George Williams College. And then I had all the New England schools, plus a couple in New York. And then I became an editor for history and music, and I went to San Francisco.
Okay. So you would actually edit the textbooks?
Yeah, you went look for people to write books.
Okay.
You know, we needed an American history book. You needed.
So after a few years on the road, you had a pretty good idea of what people were looking for.
Yeah.
So you had a unique kind
Correct.
of... Yeah, okay.
So, and there was a lot of competition. There were plenty of other college textbook publishers.
Right.
We were the only big one, or we were small, but we were still about the only one on the West Coast.
Oh, interesting.
So we could appeal to people in the California system, which was growing by leaps and bounds at that time.
Right.
And
So was there a specific subject you covered, or just the...
well, I had music, not first. I had history and education.
So you stayed within that?
You stayed in that
okay,
area.
right.
And it took you all over the country. If there was a history convention in New York City, you had to go to it. And usually they started the day after Christmas.
Okay.
So
abbreviated holidays.
yeah. So I was lucky. My folks were still alive in Norwich.
Okay.
So I'd leave a little early and spend Christmas with
Do you have
them.
any siblings? I didn't ask you.
I had two older brothers.
Oh, okay. All right.
The oldest one was a teacher,
Okay.
and since retired, lives in Florida.
Yep.
And the middle brother joined the Navy, and then he applied for aviation school.
Mm-hmm.
And he joined the Navy right out of high school, practically, and went to aviation school at Pensacola, got his wings and his commission, and he spent 21 years as a Marine Corps pilot.
Oh, interesting.
And he had 2 tours in Vietnam. He first started out in jets, all-weather fighters.
Okay.
And then they said there was a need for helicopter pilots, and also he wanted to go to the Mediterranean. They said if you become a helicopter pilot, you probably can get to the Med.
Oh,
so he
okay.
did.
Good.
Then he decided he'd like to get back into jets, but by that time the Vietnam War had started to escalate, and they really needed helicopter pilots.
Right.
So he had 2 tours in Vietnam.
Wow.
And
As a helicopter pilot, that's not going to be...
well, he was badly wounded a month before his last term.
Okay.
The tour ended, and he spent 3 months in the hospital at Newport, Rhode Island, big Navy hospital there.
Okay.
And then he ended his career in the Marines by flying Helicopter 1 for the president and the
Really?
vice president. Yeah.
Wow.
So he flew Nixon and
quite a job.
Agnew and
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
And if lots of trips went to Camp David and so forth.
Now, what were your siblings' names? Just
The oldest one is Jim,
okay.
and the middle brother, who is now deceased, the Marine, his name was Charles David Riordan, but because my father was Charles, everybody called him David.
Okay. I should have done this at the beginning. What were your parents' names?
Charles and Mary.
Okay, all right. So we'll jump back to you. So you moved to San Francisco and you're working there, and so that was 61, 64. Okay,
Yeah.
so you were in San Francisco during some fairly interesting times.
Oh yes,
yeah.
I had an opportunity to see the Haight-Ashbury area before it really became known.
Okay.
A young woman I had gone to school with at UConn was living out there.
Okay.
And I called her, and she asked me over the phone what I'd seen, and I'd been on the Kirby Street, Lombard. I'd seen the tower and Golden Gate Bridge and all that. So,
Oh, you mean sightseeing wise? She asked
yeah.
what you'd seen.
So she took
Okay.
me up to. She said, "Let's go up here." She met me in a car.
Yeah.
Let's go up here. I've heard interesting things about it.
Okay.
So we got up to Haight-Ashbury, and it's kind of a regular neighborhood.
Yeah.
It was nothing spectacular. It wasn't run down, but it wasn't. That's all a blue collar town. And at that time, the women all had long hair and long skirts, and lots of beads.
Right.
And the guys had longish hair and a lot of banjos or guitars.
So the hippie era. Had
It
kinda
was
kicked in.
beginning.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That was about 62, 63.
Right.
Well, by the end of 64, things had changed.
Had they?
And the psychedelic stuff had come in, and it was quite colorful.
Yeah. Interesting thing.
Yeah,
Slice
and
of
it
history
was a
to it.
vibrant place.
Was it?
Until about 1968, when the hard drugs started to come in.
Okay.
But there was a lot going on. There were the protests at Berkeley,
Right.
the free speech movement, and the anti-war stuff. You couldn't go into San Francisco and not see some march carrying placards.
Really?
And
It was a hotbed of all
oh
sorts.
yes, I was at San Francisco State College. Now it's San Francisco State University. Joan Baez was there with her husband David, and they had a big booth, and there was a big rally.
Yeah.
And David finally went to jail because he was burned his draft card or something.
So what? The Summer of Love was 67, right?
Oh yeah.
So you were there. That
I
was
was
kind
there.
of the zenith of that whole.
Oh yeah.
And so
In
you
fact,
were there right through that. Wow.
I bought a yellow Volkswagen with a convertible with a black top.
Interesting.
1967.
You were a cool dude then.
And well, immediately it was nicknamed Mellow Yellow.
Oh, really?
And it was a real cool car.
Yeah.
And but it was a very interesting time to be there. There was something going on, and of course it was a great place for a bachelor because
I can imagine.
there were probably 5 or 6 women to every guy.
Really? It was that disproportionate.
Yeah. And people were pouring in all kinds of figures. 1,000 people a week were coming in.
Interesting. Yeah.
Some might have been leaving, but the population of those people between 18 and 30 just grew and grew and grew and grew.
It was a magnet.
It was, and besides San Francisco, you had Sausalito across the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right.
And there was Berkeley, where UC Berkeley is, across the Oakland Bay Bridge.
Okay.
And there was a lot going on.
No shortage of energy.
No.
So what was it when you look back on it? I mean, that is a very poignant slice of Americana there, in some ways, But what was it? Sometimes I find that descriptions, in the generic description of a time doesn't always capture what it was really like, So you talk to people that were D-Day or something like that, and they have a different story than what you might hear. How would you just kind of did describe it? But is there anything else you would find yourself repeating to people that?
There was more openness out there.
Okay.
More freedom of movement, freedom of thought. Besides the social revolution, there was, quote, the sexual revolution had started, and there was just a lot going on. If you were to compare 1955 with 1965, you would know you were on the same planet.
Right, I can imagine, yeah.
If you were living out there. The 1960s, in most places, didn't get going until about 1963.
Right.
Unless you were in San Francisco, and then it started in 1958.
Okay, yeah.
They were way ahead.
The hair wasn't quite long yet, but there was a lot of the beatnik kind of stuff.
Yeah. So they were just a little bit ahead of the curve.
Okay.
And it was an exciting time. And there was always something going on, protesting this or protesting that. And
right.
They had a parking lot in Berkeley, and some students wanted to plant shrubberies in it, and they did. The police came along and pulled them out. You know, there's all that kind of stuff going on.
Constant conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was fairly nonviolent at first, right?
At first,
yeah.
It was pretty nonviolent. And then some of the protests did get out of hand.
Okay.
And I know when I used to work over to UC Berkeley and work the campus, there would be kids walking around with scars and bandages. They wore them like, medals, They had been in conflict with the police.
Right.
The establishment.
Okay.
And
so
there was quite there was a lot of furor going on.
Right. Were there any like interesting moments that you find yourself relating to people, like things you saw or specific events or anything?
Well, seeing the big marches down the street, the anti-war, there was a lot of anti-war activity out there.
Okay.
And seeing Joan Baez and David, and there was a free speech movement at Berkeley. A guy by the name of Mario started it. I can't remember the details how I got going,
right.
But it just grew and grew and grew, and finally the whole campus was involved with it. And it was great to be over there and see all those people milling around.
So you were 30 at this point, or give or take, and so you were a little bit older and able to observe it more as an adult as opposed to being...
I turned 30 in 1965.
Right.
So, I was older. I wasn't 21 or 22. But the students really were on the warpath there.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of anti-war stuff. They were burning bras and draft cards,
right,
all kinds of things.
Just anything they could do to make a statement. Yeah. Well, they certainly made a statement that kind of resonated through the whole country.
Yes, it did.
Would you, when you were, is there anything that you, now you were working through all this?
Yes.
You had and your career was going well, and
it was going
wasn't
well.
Too distracted by the chaos around you. No. And so, what take us from there?
Well, I got met a young woman who was a Pan American stewardess.
Okay.
Met her, I guess, in early '67.
In California.
In California. I met her at a party at a ranch down the peninsula, and she roomed with 3 or 4 other stewardesses. One was TWA American. She was Pan Am.
Okay.
And I met her, and then 2 years later, in 1968, we got married.
Okay.
And it was a interesting wedding. Her family was sort of international. She was born in Bangkok.
Okay.
She was part Thai, part French, and part Swedish, I guess. And had her family was then living in England, and so they had to come over to the wedding, and it was very exciting and so forth.
Wow.
And my oldest brother made the wedding, but my Marine brother didn't. He was supposed to make it, but he was on board the ship heading for his second tour, and all of a sudden the boat started to move. He couldn't get off it.
He had to go, yeah. Wow.
So the original plan was he would go to the wedding and fly and meet the boat in Hawaii, but that didn't work out. But so we stayed.
Those are dramatic times, though.
Oh,
I mean, he's going off to Vietnam. You don't know if he's coming back.
No.
You're getting married. You're living in the center of a social revolution, really. And I mean, those are.
I remember the first tour.
Times.
The first tour he went. It was 1965, and I had to drive him to Angel Island,
right,
where he was going to embark from. And I thought, there's a good chance I won't see him again.
Bizarre, huh?
But he made that tour well and came back, and was back for about almost a year, and then he went back for the second tour, and it was toward the end of that tour that he got wounded.
Okay, so you're married.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do? Do you buy a house? Do you go?
Well, the house. So we lived in this apartment on McCundry Lane in San Francisco, you can't drive down it. You can only walk down it.
Okay.
And it's now, if you pick up a book of San Francisco, one of these coffee table books, there's usually a picture of McConaughey Lane in it.
Okay.
It's a very picturesque place.
Oh, okay.
And I had a one-room apartment.
Beautiful city.
Oh, it's fantastic. I had a nice view of the bay. I could see Alcatraz.
Yep.
And had a corner fireplace. It was very nice, small, but nice. Yeah. Well, we then moved to Belmont, bought a house down there, which is 25 miles south of the city.
Okay.
And then, about a year or so later, a friend of mine who worked for Houghton Mifflin in Boston was out, and I had changed jobs by that time. I had gone back into the field, and my territory was San Francisco and Honolulu.
Okay.
And so I covered the Hawaiian Islands. It was nice. I kept adding weeks on to the visit.
I bet.
At first, it was 1 week in October and 1 week in March.
Right.
And I finally got it up to 4 weeks in October and 4 weeks in March.
It's a great place to visit.
Yes. And it was really fun because my wife was Pan Am stewardess.
Right.
So when I went out, I would fly to Hilo on the Big Island first.
Right.
I would go first class.
Wow.
And it was very nice.
Yeah, working for the airlines in that era was a pretty good gig.
Oh,
for
yeah.
lack of a
Well, the meals
travel.
were incredible.
Yeah,
even in steerage in the back,
Right.
they gave you 2 or 3 choices.
Yeah.
And the first class meals, the menus were this big.
Yeah.
And the champagne. Oh, I really lived it up.
Yeah, I bet. I've interviewed other folks that worked for the airlines in that era, and it was like they were little celebrities. They could fly all over the world
Oh,
for
it
free.
was just incredible.
Yeah, it was great.
I mean, so different now. Now you're lucky if you get peanuts and crackers.
That's right.
And,
And a can of ginger
the
ale.
seats were wider. It was quite nice.
Right.
So then a friend of mine I had known back east was editor-in-chief at Houghton Mifflin Company in Boston.
Right.
And he offered me a job with a little more pay, so I took it.
Doing the same.
Doing the same thing. I went to Houghton Mifflin and bought a house in Medfield, Massachusetts, and that's where we had our first child. Medfield's about 25 miles south of
What was
Boston.
your wife's name?
Francis.
So what was your wife's name? Yeah. And your first son? Was it son?
Well, first child was Teresa. We call it Terry.
Okay.
And the second child is Timothy.
Okay, so you have
2.
Teresa and
Timothy.
Timothy.
T&T.
So you're living in Medfield.
Mm-hmm.
You have Teresa, and what was the neighborhood like there? What was it?
It was a nice neighborhood. It was, raised ranches,
Okay.
2-car garages,
Right.
This kind of thing. Very pleasant.
This is in the early 70s.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is the early 70s. And we took the bus into Boston.
Now, was your wife still a stewardess?
She was for a while.
Okay.
She started flying out of New York City. Before in San Francisco, of course, she was going to Tokyo, Hong Kong, Sydney, Melrose, and Australia, New Zealand,
Right.
Christchurch. And when in New York, she was flying to London, Paris, Prague.
Okay.
But then she got pregnant and had to quit.
Right. Okay, so you're living in Medfield. You have, and then you had your son.
Mm-hmm.
How many years was there?
Terry was born in 73. Tim was born in 76.
Okay.
And so I enjoyed my job with Houghton Mifflin, but I liked going the field. And so I happened to know the Prentice Hall sales manager for New England.
Okay.
And he offered me a job. He said, we need someone in Connecticut and cover Connecticut and Rhode Island.
So you went back to where you
So
started.
I
in some ways.
went,
In
so then
terms
I
of the
moved to
job.
Terrifield.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where I ended up. I had, I managed a few people, and I had a territory that was Rhode Island, Connecticut, and a little bit of Western Massachusetts.
So give us a time frame here. You've got 2 children. What year did you make the move back to Connecticut?
About 77.
So you've got 5 kids that are just getting into school.
Yeah.
At that point. Yeah.
They went to Terrifield School.
Okay.
And I stayed with Prentice Hall until I retired
Okay.
in 1999.
Wow. So you had almost 3 different careers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all in the same.
But it was all in the textbook industry.
Now let me ask you a question. How did that industry change from the 50s to the
Quite a bit.
Why don't you just define or try to quantify that for us?
course, we wanted the professors to adopt our books and buy new ones.
Right.
And bookstores would often, of course, buy books back from students
Right.
and then resell them.
Okay.
So the used book market was our enemy.
Okay.
That was not good. But then the big guys got in it, Barnes and Noble and others, Borders. They started going around the country buying used books.
Really? From graduating or
well, they would buy them from
students?
bookstores or buy them from students. And so if you got an adoption, say, at the University of New Hampshire for Introduction to Soch book,
Right.
the bookstore manager there, the textbook manager, would, send a wire to Barnes and Noble and say, "Do you have any copies of this book?"
So they collected these? I mean, they filled warehouses with
Full of
used
them.
books.
Yeah. So you
Interesting.
might get an adoption somewhere for 500 books,
Right.
but you might only get about 200 copies because they got 300 of them used.
Wow.
And that really started
Eating away. I bet.
making it very difficult for textbook publishers of new books.
Okay.
Then it started getting into electronic books.
Right.
They would start putting together customized books and taking pieces of books and putting them together. And if you had a big enough adoption, that would work.
Right.
And
So the kids, this is late in your career, but
Yeah.
they pull them up on what, like
Yeah.
Nooks and stuff? Or
and
the
now,
computer?
of course, they can pull them up from the internet.
So they do them in e-readers now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, they've started renting books now.
So is the textbook market still there?
It's still there.
Yeah.
But it's changed completely. It's much more electronic, much more technical now.
Right.
And some people still like to have a book in their hand. But
Well, from a tactile point of view, but as a functional component of education, is it? I mean, it seems. I'm just going to throw it, but it seems to me that the book is days are numbered, because if you can pull it up on a $50 or whatever device and load all your books into it, that takes a lot of the cost.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And you're probably right. Textbook days are numbered because now people still use books. But
Right.
when I started in the business, an introductory psychology textbook might sell for, I don't know, $15, $18.
Right.
Now they're $125.
Okay, so this exponential growth in the cost, but
Right.
that's partially a result on the numbers they're selling.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's just gotten more expensive to print them.
Okay.
And they got a lot more color in them now.
Right. Right.
And I remember the first history book that came out with color inserts was about 1965.
Okay.
They were all black and white before then.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So the cost has come down in color and stuff
Yeah.
like that, but still
the used book market and the renting of books and the being able to get a book up on the computer.
Now, are there courses that actually utilize strictly electronic?
I would guess so.
Yeah.
I've been out of it since 1999.
That's good time.
And but you could see it coming. The big change was the Apple computer.
Right.
That seemed to be the one most instructors wanted to use.
It caught on. Yeah.
Especially in the sciences because they had great graphics.
Right.
Even the old Apples had pretty good graphics.
Right.
So people now, when they do a term paper, they send it to the professor through the computer.
Yeah. There's no.
They don't carry it into the classroom,
Yeah.
And that kind of thing.
Which is more efficient in some ways.
It is.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting back, you're in Simsbury. What was Simsbury like when you first moved there? So mid '70s. What?
Yeah. What was it like? Well, Terraville, where I moved into, off Hayes Street. Hayes Street is off Route 315.
Okay, one of the side streets.
Yeah, and it's a cul-de-sac. If you go in on Hayes Street, you have to leave the same way.
Okay.
So it was a great neighborhood for kids.
Right.
Because the only people who drove up Hayes Street either lived there, were visiting, or delivering something.
Okay.
And so houses were fairly close together. The land was flat. was a great place for bring up kids.
A good school system.
And a good school system.
Yeah.
And Terrifield School at that time was probably as close to a little red schoolhouse as you could get in the 20th century.
Right.
And
so the population of the school itself was fairly small.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Route 315 from Route 10 over to 187 was not too heavily traveled. And but things have changed.
There's quite a traffic there now.
Now, if you go out early in the morning, say at 7:30, I have trouble turning left, trying to get down 315 to Route 10.
It always surprises me there's not more accidents there.
And they're lined up at the stop sign
Yeah.
forever, and that didn't exist when we first moved in.
Really?
Part of it may be that things like Day Hill Road in Windsor, when we moved in, was a two-lane road.
And filled with tobacco.
Nothing but tobacco fields.
Right.
And at the end of it, there was a Texaco station.
Right.
Now, in the 1980s, that all changed. The Texaco station did go, and the tobacco fields went, and these huge office buildings came up.
Right.
And so that, we think, is part of the reason. And there was just more general development.
You're probably right, because there really is no functional way to get from, say, west of there to Day Hill area or even up to the airport other than go through that bottleneck there.
Right.
They almost need
315
another
is
main
it.
road south of... Yeah.
So that became...
Excuse me.
That became a well-used shortcut.
Right.
And in the mornings, it's unbelievable now.
But, I mean, raising your kids there, you were happy with the whole
It was
experience?
delightful.
Great town, yeah.
We used to get a lot of visitors at Halloween.
Okay.
People used to bring their children to the area so they could go from house to house.
Because it was close.
It was close. The houses were fairly close together. It was flat.
Right.
I remember the first year we were there, we had 225 kids.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember going out to get milk or something, and you could see all these station wagons lined up at the beginning of Hay Street. They were from Granby, Simsbury, West Simsbury. They brought them all over.
Really? That's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. So you had a pretty good experience there. Did you ever get involved with anything in town, or were you?
Not that much.
No. Okay. It's a bigger town. So there's a lot.
I never got into town government.
Right.
That kind of thing.
So what was your wife doing at this point? What was it?
Well, raising two kids.
Okay. But
And she also did child care.
Oh, she did. So she did.
Had kids come. We'd have kids come in the morning.
Right.
And then they'd go off to school, and then they'd come in the afternoon.
Right.
And she had to be certified, and these state inspectors would come by and so forth.
Yeah, that's a pretty well regulated.
And it was a source of income.
Right.
And then when the kids got older, she went into retailing. She worked at West Farms Mall quite a while, and she ended up most of her retail experience with Talbot's. It's a women's clothing store.
Okay.
Very expensive women's clothing store.
Okay. Yep.
And she worked the one in West Farms Mall. Then there was one in Glastonbury.
Right.
Then she came over to Avon. They had a small one there, which was going to be closed down when the new shops called Farmington Valley in Canton.
Yep.
On Route 44. There's a huge Talbot's there.
Okay.
And she went there, and she was an assistant manager for many years.
Oh, so she had a whole nother career herself, really.
Yeah. And she retired about 3 years ago.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
So, if you were okay, I'm going to get into some generic questions that I ask anybody. Is there, well, before I do that, is there anything other stories that you find yourself repeating to people that we glossed over here? Like, generally, you're probably not old enough to get into the repetitive mode yet.
Well, not yet.
But generally, I find as people get older, there's a few stories that they kind of
repeat.
Is there anything that you?
No.
Okay. We covered a lot.
Yeah. When I retired in 1999 from Clemens Hall, during my last year or so, I noticed cars going down the street covered in white paper, and elderly people driving them, and the plates usually said "dealer."
Okay.
What they were doing was delivering cars from one dealer to another.
Okay, interesting.
And so I thought, gee, that might be something to do.
Oh, I see where you're going with. Okay, yeah.
So I bought a little silver Acura, two-door.
Okay.
It was a neat little car, stick shift.
Yeah, nice cars.
And back seat was impossible to get into, but something happened to the back windshield wiper. So I went over to Acura of Avon,
Okay.
and I met one of the used car manager was Tony DiNapoli. And I asked him about a job driving cars. He said, well, I'll give you a call. About a week later, he called me up. And so I started driving cars for Acura of Avon.
Oh, great.
And I was with them for about 2 years.
Oh,
Close to 2.5 years.
Something to keep you busy. Huh?
Yeah, I drove, I think the longest trip I took was up New Hampshire to get a car.
Okay.
And if someone wanted a blue car, and Acura of Milford had a blue car, but we didn't.
Right.
I'd drive the gray one down and the blue one back.
Swap them out.
Yeah.
Now, you, I mean, the Mitchell group is pretty big. How many guys like you did they have driving?
At that time, there was myself and two other.
That's just in Acura, though.
Yeah, that was just Acura.
Okay. They didn't
that
trade
didn't include
employees
Subaru or Volkswagen or Volvo or Dodge.
Okay.
That was just Acura.
Okay.
Well, Acura was not part of Mitchell. Acura was part of what's the guy's name? DeLone or something like that.
Oh, it was a separate.
It was separate. It wasn't.
Oh, Mitchell didn't own it at that point.
Mitchell had Subaru. It didn't have Acura. It was this guy. I'm blanking on his name, but he had Honda dealers and Acuras.
Okay.
And heck, what's his name? I just can't think of it.
Yes, that's okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get, like I said, I'm going to jump into some generic questions here about your life. What are the biggest changes that you were in Simsbury? Contrast Simsbury with some of the other places you lived. What were the biggest differences? Was it any?
Well, Simsbury was kind of like Norwich.
Okay.
It was pretty quiet.
Okay.
It's pretty quiet. My son used to call it Dullsbury.
Okay.
It just wasn't enough going on for him. I mean, everywhere else I lived, with the exception of Medfield, Massachusetts, which is would be like Simsbury.
Right.
It was in the city.
Right.
San Francisco, New York, Boston.
Yeah, I bet.
It's hard to compare them.
Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, especially from Haight-Ashbury.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you were what? You've been in Simsbury for 35 years now.
1976. Yeah.
Okay, 37 years, 8 years, and 37 years. And you had what are the biggest changes you've seen in Simsbury itself, other than the traffic up and down 350?
Well, that's one of the bigger changes.
Yeah.
I would say probably they've done the downtown quite a bit. They've made it more attractive.
It's a beautiful.
It's a beautiful place. The taxes keep going up. That's one change.
Okay. Universal.
Yeah. And one of the reasons Simsbury does have high taxes is they never allowed any industrial parks in.
Right.
Like Avon, Farmington. You have Avon Park South. You can't even see it from the road.
Right.
And it's all, I used to deliver payrolls in there.
Right.
All nicely manicured lawns, nice buildings.
Corporate kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Simsbury would not allow that.
Right.
And that was too bad. But it was just it was a great town for kids, the kids when they were small. But I haven't seen anything dramatic change in Simsbury since moving there.
Okay. So it's especially that Terriffill area is pretty similar.
Yeah.
To what 30 years ago. So if you is there anything that you would like to see Simsbury have other than the broader tax base? I guess is probably one of the things. But
well, I think they do have a great recreational area, Simsbury Farms. That is superb. I've played golf up there, and it's a great golf course.
That's a golf course. Yeah, they've got their own private.
Yeah, they got a pool, and and I think now that people do use it a lot more.
Okay.
It's quite. I haven't been up there for a while, but because I don't play golf anymore. But it was a great place to play golf, and the course was well kept up, well manicured. It was really delightful.
Great.
They had tennis courts. We used to have picnics up there. They had these wrought iron things in the ground. You could put charcoal in.
Okay.
This kind of thing.
Good recreation area.
Yeah. Terrific.
Now they've got that whole area right down off of what's that? Not Hop Meadow, Horseshoe Drive or Horse. You know, that behind Main Street, They have the big bandstand. They do concerts and stuff.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Iron something.
Iron Horse Boulevard.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's terrific, that bandstand.
Yeah.
And they usually have 5 concerts in the summer.
Big ones.
And the biggest is the 4th of July.
Right, right.
And that's gigantic.
Right.
But I went to 3 this summer. Went to the 4th of July one. And the other big one was the one Frank Sinatra tunes.
Right.
And I was very well attended. I was kind of surprised.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's a nice place to see a concert. I've gone for the 4th of July events. Yeah. Now, you get back to, do you think it's a good value to live in Simsbury? And when you compare the schools and your property values and your taxes?
Well, I would say yes, it probably is.
It balances out.
It's a very, I think, desirable area.
Yeah.
It's rural. There's a lot there.
Right.
And there's plenty of shops.
Right.
I think we got 11 liquor stores.
Yeah.
And almost as many as nail shops. You can get your nail done practically every other store. And so there's a lot there, and we don't go into Hartford shopping much.
You're able to satisfy what you need in town. Yeah.
Especially now, because we're all casual clothes.
Yeah, you don't have to go to the big malls.
No, if Kohl's is having a sale, I can go over there.
Right.
Or Bob's store or something.
Right, you don't need a suit and tie anymore.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So, if this is the question that I ask everyone. If you were to give advice, do you have any grandchildren, or do you have?
I have one grandchild. She's a freshman at the University of Hartford.
Okay.
And she's the one who we may give the car to. That we're looking at today.
Right, right.
And because she's driving a 1996 Toyota, which is kind of old.
Okay. All right. So you have one granddaughter. Mm-hmm. And what's her name?
That's Emily.
Emily. Okay. So do you have? If you had advice, this is the question I've asked pretty much every guest on the show, I think. If you were giving advice to young people growing up today, having been born in the 30s, going through the war, or the 60s, with your vast experience of life, what would that be to a young person growing up today? What would be the generic advice you give them?
Well, I think the obvious answer is to get a good education.
Okay.
And
you just got an award, by the way. That's the number one answer. On Reflections.
Stay out of trouble.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
And she is an education major, so she wants to be a teacher. So
okay,
that's good.
Right.
My other child, Tim, is a warrant officer in the Army. The Army Air Force, I guess you'd call it. He's a helicopter pilot.
Right.
And he's just back from Afghanistan. He came in early because he was out on a long day patrol, came in, he was sick. He had stomach flu.
Okay.
So he took some medicine, got up and fainted, and he separated his shoulder.
Wow.
So we think he's back at Fort Riley, Kansas now.
Okay.
He was supposed to be over there until April.
Right.
But they're pulling them all out early. And he was in Iraq for a year before that.
It's going to be a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah. He was lucky in Iraq. He was in northern Iraq where
the
Kurds are. Things were a little quieter.
Right.
But he said Afghanistan is just desolate.
Is it? Is that what he said?
There's nothing there. He said there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And, there's, at night sometimes when the sun sets, there's a mountain range turns nice red. But everything else is just sand.
Really?
And there's no industry. It's just a crossroads.
Yeah, I've had some family and friends that were over there. They were eager to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And that's where the spice roads were. It was a caravan place. It was a crossroads.
Historically, it had.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So we're glad he's back. We haven't heard from him yet. We may get a call tonight.
Right.
So we're pretty sure he's either in Germany on his way back or has landed in Riley.
But he's out of the desert.
Yeah, he's out of the desert.
That's a good thing.
So anyway, Any advice I can give to him, he wouldn't listen to anyway.
Okay, all right. Well, I'd like to thank you, Kevin, for coming on tonight. It was a pleasure. And,
well, I enjoyed it.
And it's always a different angle we come at here in Reflections. But once again, I'd like to thank our audience at home for joining us. And you can view this on www.gctv16.org at your leisure. We are on Friday nights at 8 p.m. and playing again on Saturday morning. And thank you for joining us. Thanks.